Good evening. Welcome to the State of Business on our television with me, Kavish Kaparera. Let's take a look at today's headlines. Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, stresses a green financial system for Sri Lanka. Former President of the Colombo Chamber of Commerce says that Sri Lanka startup projects should be brought to the international market. News in detail. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka launched the Roadmap for Sustainable Finance in Sri Lanka and hosted a high-level seminar for the senior officers of financial institutions and stakeholders yesterday at the Central Bank premises. That was the national launch of the Roadmap for Sustainable Finance, which was unveiled globally on the 10th of April this year at the Sustainable Banking Network Global Meeting of the International Finance Corporation in Washington. The roadmap was developed in consultation with stakeholders including the Sri Lanka Bankers Association Guaranteed Limited, Finance Houses Association of Sri Lanka, Insurance Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka and Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka. International Finance Corporation served as a secretariat and technical advisor, and the United Nations Development Programme provided financial support through its Biodiversity Finance initiative to the Central Bank in designing the Sustainable Finance Roadmap. The roadmap provides a broad direction to financial regulators and financial institutions to effectively manage environmental, social and governance risk associated with projects. The roadmap also articulates a series of strategic activities to implement sustainable finance in Sri Lanka, while detailing an action plan to be implemented over short-term, medium-term and long-term by respective shareholders. The Central Bank has already appointed a steering committee on implementation of the Roadmap for Sustainable Finance in Sri Lanka to facilitate effective implementation of the strategic activities encompassed in the roadmap. Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, said that Sri Lanka is targeting a green financial system and encouraging financial projects to combat climate change in Sri Lanka, adhering to the guidelines of the Roadmap for Sustainable Finance. Governor Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy made these remarks yesterday addressing the function to locally launch the roadmap at the Central Bank premises, attended by senior officers of financial institutions and stakeholders and the media.
In consultation with relevant government agencies and financial sector stakeholders, with technical support from international partner agencies, this roadmap has now become a reality and is being launched locally today. A memorandum of understanding was signed in May 2017 between the Central Bank of Sri Lanka and the IFC with regard to sustainable finance practices in Sri Lanka. This MOU supported the efforts of the Central Bank in formulating this roadmap. The Central Bank recognizes its role in supporting financial sector stakeholders and guiding financial institutions to effectively manage environmental and social risks in the business ventures that they finance and promoting financing towards greener and climate-friendly economic activities. For this purpose, the Central Bank has been very much involved in formulating this roadmap for sustainable finance.
Meanwhile, the Cabinet of Ministers gave permission to raise up to 480 million rupees for debt financing under the Active Liability Management Act, the Government Information Department announced yesterday. The Cabinet approved the proposal presented by Finance Minister Mangala Samarawira to present a proposal to Parliament to collect a sum exceeding not 480 billion rupees in accordance with the provisions of the Active Liability Management Act No. 8 of 2018. Minister Mangala Samarawira on Tuesday said that the economy grew at 3.5% in the first quarter, recovering from 1.8% in the previous quarter, and the central bank cut its key interest rates on 31st May to support a faltering economy as overall business and consumer confidence slumped following deadly bomb attacks in April. In the meantime, analysts expect the rupee to weaken further as money flows out of stocks and government securities. The rupee fell 0.14% last week but is up by 3.39% for the year. Exporters have converted dollars as investors' confidence stabilized after the $1 billion sovereign bond was repaid in mid-January by the government. Central bank data also showed that foreign investors bought a net 311 million rupees worth of government securities in the week ended 12 June, but Sri Lanka's net foreign outflow was at rupees 21.6 billion so far this year. The Department of Census and Statistics said that Sri Lanka's economy grew by 3.7% in the first quarter of 2019 from a year earlier, helped by the agriculture sector returning to normalcy. According to the latest statistics and data by the DCS, the agriculture sector grew by 5.5% from a year earlier, while the industrial sector grew 3% and the services sector by 4.1%. Issuing a communique on releasing national accounts estimates for the first quarter of 2019, DCA states that economic growth rate of the country is estimated at 3.7% for the first quarter of 2019. The agriculture sector had continued to feel the tail-end effects of the two-year-long drought in the first quarter of 2018, and the growth in the first quarter of 2019 reflects the end of weather anomalies. The highest growth in agriculture came from coconut, with the crop up 35.6% from a year earlier. There was a low coconut supply in the first quarter of 2018 as crop growing was battered by the drought in 2017. Supply of coconuts returned to normal later in 2018. Meanwhile, paddy farming grew 13.1% in the first quarter of 2019 as it had shown some recovery a year earlier as well. Fastest growth was seen in financial services, up 9.8%, programming and broadcasting activities up 8.1%, and insurance and pension funding activities up 8%. Accommodation and food, beverage and activities also grew 4.5%, while wholesale and trade grew by 4.4%. Keep tuning in for more news after this short commercial break. Welcome back. Former President of the Colombo Chamber of Commerce, Dr. Amila Kankanamge, says that the startup projects by the Sri Lankan youth should be brought to the international market. Dr. Kankanamge, exclusively speaking to our television, stressed that governments must facilitate such entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurs must decide not to give up.
You need to work hard and work with organizations, chambers and stakeholders to bring in your startup. Manage your finances properly. And for stakeholders like the government, we should say the economy, 80% of the economy is SME sector in this country, anywhere in the world. So to build an economy, you need to sustain and you need to facilitate the SMEs. You need to bring out entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur is someone who will take off the burden of the government. For an example, if I am an entrepreneur, if I start a business and if it's successful, I will employ 10 people. All those 10 people used to be the government's headache. So all these 10 people will have life and then their families will have life if I go into a successful state. So all startups and SMEs should focus on getting their startups to the global market, not only stagnate in Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka is a very small market if you compare the world. And we have a huge market in India. And then if you take the SAARC region, 25% of the world population is in the SAARC region. So we have a huge market, a very vast market in our region itself.
Agriculture, Livestock Development, Irrigation and Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Development Minister P. Harrison informed the Parliament the local canned fish industry was meeting a part of the market demand at an affordable price. He made these remarks in Parliament yesterday, acknowledging that more support was necessary to make it globally competitive. Agriculture, Livestock Development, Irrigation and Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Development Minister P. Harrison, responding to a supplementary question, said that there are several local companies engaged in the canned fish industry in the island. The minister said that the World Bank and Norway have started several programs to provide advice and diverse assistance required to develop the fisheries industry in Sri Lanka. He assured all the assistance for the industry from the government without having any political affiliations. Export Development Board announces that the Presidential Export Awards, the highest and the most prestigious award presented by the head of the state to exporters in recognition of their outstanding contribution to the export sector and to economic development of the country, will be held in September. The EDB invites applications from Sri Lankan exporters for selection of Presidential Export Award winners for the financial year of April to March 2019.
Sri Lanka Export Development Board is planning to organize the 23rd Presidential Export Awards ceremony under the patronage of His Excellency the President of Sri Lanka at the BMICH on the 19th September 2019. This year there will be about 14 overall awards as well as 43 sectoral awards. This year's ceremony has special features. We have added 3 new overall awards, namely Exporter to the Global Value Chain, Innovative Export Product of the Year, and also the Organic Export Product of the Year. And also at the sectoral categories, we will consider not only the export performance of the companies, we will use the multiple criteria such as export growth during the PEA year, market diversification, number of employment provided, as well as the value addition. So we invite all the exporters to apply for the PEA 2018-2019, and the application and the details could be downloaded from the EDB website www.srilankabusiness.com.
Sri Lanka's rupee opened stronger at 176.6575% against the US dollar in the spot market today, while bond yields were stable and stocks gained. The rupee closed at 176.775 yesterday against the greenback. Here are the head of the research of the First Capital Brokers, Dimantha Matthew, giving a brief review on the market behavior during the week.
Overall, market has been a bit volatile with ups and downs over the last few days, though on lower market activity. Supported by some internal transfers, turnover was boosted during the early part of the week. But ignoring that, the overall activities were relatively low. However, we saw a bit of retail buying interest entering the market into selected counters, resulting in some sharp capital appreciation. Foreign participation was low with continuous outflows. However, some foreign interest was observed in John Keel's holdings as there was an inflow noted on Thursday.
Keep tuning in for stock updates after this short commercial break. Welcome back. Trading at the Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a negative note today. The all-share price index dropped 20.8 points to close at 5,372.37, and the S&P/SL 20 dropped 19.93 points to close at 2,493.88. The turnover was 136 million rupees, with 46 stocks gaining and 50 falling. Next up is Forex rates. Well, that's a wrap of the bulletin for the day, signing off with a promise for tomorrow at the same time with nothing but the latest. Thank you and good night.